The handcuffs bit into Marcus Cole's wrists as the bailiff shoved him toward the defendant's stand. Judge Ruth Kensington slammed her palm on the bench and laughed a sharp, mocking sound that echoed through the packed courtroom. Her voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "You speak 11 languages, and I'm the Queen of England." The gallery erupted. Journalists in the back row smirked. A woman in the jury box covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Marcus didn't flinch. He looked the judge dead in the eyes, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Give me 5 minutes, Your Honor. Just 5, and I'll make you apologize in front of everyone." Kensington's laughter stopped cold. The courtroom fell silent. She leaned forward, reading glasses sliding down her nose, and her smile turned predatory. "Mr. Cole, you just added 3 years to your sentence. Contempt of court, obstruction of justice. When you fail, and you will fail, I will personally ensure you regret every word you just spoke." Marcus held her gaze. The metal cuffs dug deeper, warm blood trickling across his palms. Behind him, a small voice broke through the tension. "Daddy." He turned. Lily sat in the front row, 9 years old, blonde hair pulled into 2 braids, her green eyes swimming with tears. Mrs. Patterson, their 70-year-old neighbor, clutched the girl's hand, her wrinkled face tight with worry. Lily's lower lip trembled. "Daddy, please, please don't go." Marcus opened his mouth, but the bailiff yanked him backward. The words died in his throat. Kensington's gavel cracked down 3 times. "Order. This hearing is adjourned for 72 hours while I arrange the evaluation. Mr. Cole, I hope you're ready, because when I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd taken the plea deal." The screen went black. White text appeared 6 weeks earlier. The apartment on Mayfield Road smelled like instant coffee and old carpet. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, glasses sliding down his nose as he squinted at the screen. A German contract filled the display, dense, technical, the kind of language that made most people's eyes glaze over. He read it the way some men read sports scores, his fingers tapping the table as he translated each clause in his head. Lily sat across from him, math homework spread out like a battlefield. She chewed the end of her pencil's forehead, scrunched in concentration. The light from the window caught her hair, turning it gold. For a moment, Marcus forgot about the contract. She looked so much like Sarah. Same stubborn tilt to her jaw. Same way of biting her lip when she was thinking hard. 6 years. 6 years since the accident. 6 years of doing this alone. Lily looked up, switching to Spanish without warning. "Papá, ¿por qué tengo que aprender tantos idiomas?" Her accent was good. Better than good. The rolled R's came naturally, the vowels rounded just right. Marcus felt a flicker of pride beneath the exhaustion. "Porque el lenguaje es poder, mi amor. No pueden quitarte lo que sabes." The words came automatically. His father's words. David Cole had said them 1,000 times, usually while scrubbing floors or emptying trash cans in embassy buildings, his hands raw from bleach and his back bent from years of labor. Language is power. They cannot take from you what you know. Lily wrinkled her nose. "But Mrs. Patterson only speaks English, and she's nice." Marcus smiled despite himself. "Mrs. Patterson is very nice, but she also can't read a menu in Paris or understand a doctor in Beijing. Knowledge opens doors, baby. Remember that." His phone buzzed. An email notification lit up the screen. He clicked it open and his chest loosened just a fraction. "Mr. Cole, payment of $6,000 has been transferred to your account." The German translation was flawless, as always. "We'll be in touch for the next project. Best J Park asterisk, $6,000. Enough for rent this month. Enough for groceries and Lily's school supplies, and maybe a new winter coat for her because the old one was getting too small." Marcus closed the laptop and stood, joints cracking. 43 years old, and he felt twice that. He walked to the window and looked out at Cleveland Heights. Rows of modest houses, cars that had seen better days, people working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. This was home. This was where he'd grown up, where his father had raised him alone after his mother died. Where he was now, raising Lily alone after Sarah's car had been T-boned by a drunk driver on a Tuesday afternoon. The photo on the bookshelf caught his eye. Sarah laughing, her dark hair whipping in the wind. Lily was 3 in that picture, perched on her mother's hip. Marcus had taken it at Edgewater Park, one of those rare, perfect days when everything felt right. He turned away before the ache in his chest could spread. "Finish your homework, kiddo. Then you can watch 1 episode before bed." Lily pumped her fist, yes. The next morning started like any other. Marcus dropped Lily off at school, watched her run toward her friends, her backpack bouncing. She turned at the door and waved. He waved back. The routine was comforting in its predictability. He was halfway through his second cup of coffee when someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps. Official. Marcus set down his mug and walked over, already feeling the first prickle of unease. He looked through the peephole. 2 men in dark suits, badges clipped to their belts. His stomach dropped. He opened the door. The taller one spoke first, his voice flat and professional. Marcus Cole. Yes, I'm Agent Brooks, FBI. This is Agent Reynolds. You're under arrest for wire fraud, identity fraud, and obtaining financial advantage by deception. Total damages estimated at $180,000. You have the right to remain silent. The words became static. Marcus's vision narrowed. His hands went numb. Wait, there's been a mistake. I haven't. Brooks moved forward, handcuffs already out. Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back. I have a daughter. She's at school. She gets out at 3 and there's no one. Sir, turn around now or we will use force. Marcus complied, the world tilting sideways. The cuffs clicked shut. Cold metal against his wrists. The same sensation he'd feel again 6 weeks later in that courtroom. Reynolds was already calling someone. We need child services at this address. Minor child 9 years old, no other guardian present. Panic surged through Marcus's chest. No, please, Mrs. Patterson next door, she can take her. Please don't call. Brooks was already steering him toward the door. We'll make sure your daughter is taken care of, Mr. Cole. Mrs. Patterson appeared in her doorway, pink bathrobe, cinched tight, her face going pale as she saw the handcuffs. Marcus, what's happening? Mrs. Patterson, his voice cracked. Can you Lily gets out at 3? Can you pick her up, please? Don't let them send her to... The old woman was already nodding in tears starting down her weathered cheeks. I'll get her. Don't you worry. I'll take care of her like she's my own. They put him in the back of an unmarked sedan. As they pulled away, Marcus looked back at the apartment building. Small, shabby, but it was theirs. Lily's drawings were taped to the refrigerator. Her stuffed rabbit sat on the couch. Her whole world was in that apartment, and he was being ripped away from it. The interrogation room was exactly like on TV. Gray walls, metal table bolted to the floor, a mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Marcus sat in the uncomfortable chair, still handcuffed, trying to process what was happening. The door opened. A woman walked in, and Marcus recognized power when he saw it. She was maybe 38, dark hair pulled back tight, wearing a suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Everything about her screamed money and education and doors that had always opened when she knocked. She set down a folder and looked at him with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so clinical. Mr. Cole, I'm Victoria Sterling, Assistant United States Attorney. I'll be prosecuting your case. Marcus's mouth was dry. There's been a mistake. I haven't defrauded anyone. Sterling opened the folder with practiced precision. 3 clients have filed complaints against you. Total financial damages of $180,000. Let me walk you through each one. She pulled out the first document. James Park, CEO of Tech Vision Solutions. March 2023, you were hired to translate technical documentation from Korean to English for a $2 million contract with a Seoul-based manufacturer. Mr. Park states that your translation was, quote, completely inaccurate and unusable, resulting in the loss of the entire contract. Marcus shook his head. I triple-checked that translation. I even consulted. Sterling continued as if he hadn't spoken. Richard Moss, attorney at law. June 2023, German to English legal contract for an international merger. Mr. Moss states your work was so flawed it exposed his client to legal liability and resulted in a malpractice complaint. That's not... Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Chief of Staff at Mercy General Hospital. September 2023. You translated Chinese medical research papers. Dr. Mitchell states your translations contain dangerous errors that could have resulted in patient deaths had they not been caught in time. Sterling closed the folder and looked at him. 3 separate clients, 3 separate languages, 3 completely independent complaints, and here's what they all have in common, Mr. Cole. She leaned forward. You have no credentials, no university degree in linguistics, no professional certifications, no formal training of any kind. You grew up in Cleveland Heights, the son of a janitor. You attended community college for 2 years and dropped out. And yet you convinced 15 different clients over 3 years to pay you for professional translation services in 11 different languages. The contempt in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus felt it like a slap. I learned from where Mr. Cole YouTube a smartphone app, Sterling's eyebrow arched. You claimed on your website that you were fluent in Mandarin, Chinese, German, French, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Italian, and Hebrew. That's not just implausible. For someone with your background, it's impossible. Marcus's hands clenched beneath the table. My father worked for diplomatic families. From when I was 5 until I was 25. I grew up in those houses. I learned from the children. You learn to say hello and thank you, maybe to order food. That's not the same as professional fluency. Sterling stood. Mr. Cole, I've reviewed dozens of fraud cases, and they all have one thing in common. The perpetrators are convincing liars who believe their own stories. She walked to the door, then paused. Your bail hearing is tomorrow morning. Given the flight risk and the severity of the charges, I'll be recommending you be held without bail. Use tonight to think about taking a plea deal. Because if this goes to trial, you're looking at 15 years federal prison. The door closed. Marcus sat alone in the gray room, his reflection staring back at him from the one-way mirror. He looked like his father. Same tired eyes, same rough hands, same invisible man the world looked right through. The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and despair. Marcus sat on the thin mattress staring at the concrete wall. His cellmate, a man in his 50s with graying hair and prison tattoos, watched him from the opposite bunk. First time. The voice was rough but not unkind. Marcus nodded. What they get you for? Fraud, but I didn't do it. The man laughed a bitter sound. Yeah, nobody in here did it. I'm Derek Murphy. Been in and out of places like this most of my life. Marcus looked at him. Derek's face was weathered-scarred, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent. Marcus Cole. So what's your story, Marcus? What kind of fraud they saying you did? Marcus explained haltingly. The translation business. The 3 complaints. The languages. Derek listened without interrupting, and when Marcus finished, the older man was quiet for a long moment. You really speak all those languages? Yes. Prove it. Marcus blinked. What? Derek grinned. Say something, anything. I was in the army stationed in Germany for 3 years. Let's hear your German. Marcus hesitated, then spoke. Ich habe mein ganzes Leben lang Sprachen gelernt. Mein Vater arbeitete als Hausmeister für diplomatische Familien und ich lernte von ihren Kindern. Derek's eyebrows rose. Okay, that sounded legit. What did you say? I've been learning languages my whole life. My father worked as a janitor for diplomatic families, and I learned from their children. Janitor? Derek nodded slowly. So you're like me, wrong side of the tracks, no fancy degree, and now the system's coming down on you because you dared to be good at something without permission. Marcus hadn't thought of it that way, but the words hit home. How long you been locked up? Derek asked. 6 hours. 6 hours and you already got that look. The look that says you're done, that you're going to take whatever deal they offer because you can't fight the machine. Derek leaned forward. Let me tell you something, Marcus. I made that choice 20 years ago. Took a plea for something I didn't do because my public defender said it was smart. You know what happened? I've been in and out of prison ever since. Once you accept that label, it sticks. Marcus's throat tightened. I have a daughter, 9 years old. I can't. Then fight like hell, because that little girl needs to see you stand up. Needs to know that being poor doesn't mean being powerless. The words hung in the air. Language is power. They cannot take from you what you know. A guard appeared at the bars. Cole, your lawyer's here. Ben Walsh looked like he'd been public defending for 1,000 years. His suit was off the rack and worn at the elbows. Coffee stains dotted his tie. He carried a briefcase that had seen better days, and when he shook Marcus's hand, his grip was tired. They sat across from each other in a small meeting room. Mr. Cole, I'm Ben Walsh. I've been assigned as your attorney. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a file. I'm going to be straight with you. This case is bad. Marcus's heart sank. Ben continued. Victoria Sterling is one of the best prosecutors in the district. She doesn't take cases she can't win. 3 separate complaints from unrelated clients. That's compelling evidence of a pattern, and your lack of formal credentials makes it very hard to argue you're qualified. But I am qualified. I can prove how. Ben looked at him over cheap reading glasses. Do you have documentation certificates, letters of recommendation from the diplomatic families? Marcus shook his head. Most of them left the country decades ago. I was just a kid. They didn't write me references. Ben sighed. Then we have a problem. It's your word against 3 professional, credentialed complainants. And I have to tell you, juries tend to believe people with degrees and fancy titles. What about a language test I could take an exam? Administered by who? The court doesn't have the resources to bring in 11 different language experts. And even if they did, Sterling would argue that passing a test doesn't mean you didn't commit fraud. It just means you know some vocabulary. Marcus felt the walls closing in. Ben closed the file. I'm recommending you take a plea deal. Sterling mentioned she might offer 5 years with parole eligibility after 3 if you plead guilty and agree to restitution. 5 years, Marcus's voice cracked. My daughter will be 14 when I get out. I know, and I'm sorry, but the alternative is going to trial and risking 15 years. Maybe more. Ben's expression softened slightly. I've been doing this job for 23 years, Marcus. I've had a lot of clients. Most of them were guilty. The innocent ones usually couldn't prove it. That's just how the system works. Marcus looked down at his hands. His father's hands, rough, calloused from work. David Cole had spent 40 years cleaning other people's dirt, and when he died of a heart attack at 64, the obituary in the Plain Dealer was 3 lines long. No one had cared. No one had noticed. And now his son was about to disappear into the same invisibility. I need to think about it. Ben nodded. You have until tomorrow morning's bail hearing. But Marcus, think carefully. Think about your daughter. That night, Marcus lay on the cell bunk and stared at the ceiling. Lily would be with Mrs. Patterson now, probably scared, probably crying, probably asking when Daddy was coming home. He'd promised her after Sarah died that he would never leave her, that she would never be alone. He was about to break that promise. Derek's voice came from the darkness. You still awake? Yeah. What are you thinking about? Taking the deal. 5 years. Get it over with. Silence. Then, you got something in your pocket. Been watching you touch it all night. What is it? Marcus reached into his pants pocket. They'd let him keep it because it wasn't contraband. Just a letter. Folded and creased, the envelope yellowed with age. He'd found it in the box of his father's belongings after the funeral. Sealed, addressed to him in David's careful handwriting. He'd been meaning to open it for 6 years, had never found the right time. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal. The letter was dated 1 week before David died. Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I was afraid. Afraid of what they might do to you if you knew. My work wasn't just cleaning, son. For 25 years, I listened. I heard things in languages they thought I couldn't understand. I heard diplomats and businessmen talking about crimes they believed no janitor could comprehend. I discovered something terrible. A network using diplomatic immunity to traffic people across borders. I documented everything. Names, dates, routes. 327 victims over 25 years. I was going to go public, but they found out. And now I'm running out of time. I've hidden the evidence at First National Bank in Boston. Safety deposit box 4721. The passphrase is something I told you 1,000 times. Language is the key they cannot take. If you're in danger, find Margaret Morrison. She's the only one who knows the whole truth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. I'm sorry I had to keep secrets. But I want you to know I was always proud of you. Not because of the languages, but because you have a good heart. You see people. You listen when others ignore. Asterisk. Use that gift, son. Use it to be more than they expect. I love you. Dad. Marcus read the letter 3 times. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rustled. His father hadn't died of a heart attack. Or if he had, it wasn't natural. Derek's voice cut through the silence. Bad news. Marcus folded the letter carefully. My father was killed, or disappeared, I don't know which. And now you are locked up on fraud charges that don't make sense. Derek's voice hardened. You're being shut down, Marcus. Someone doesn't want you poking around in whatever your dad found. The pieces clicked together. 3 complaints, 3 completely separate clients. But what if they weren't separate? What if someone had paid them to file false reports? I need to get out of here. Then take the plea. No. Marcus sat up. I need to fight. Need to prove I'm not a fraud. Because if I don't, I'll never find out what happened to my father. I'll never get justice for those victims. Derek was quiet. Then you got a plan. Not yet, but I will. The bail hearing happened in a cramped courtroom at 9 the next morning. Marcus stood beside Ben Walsh, hands cuffed in front of him. Victoria Sterling sat at the prosecutor's table perfectly composed. Judge Ruth Kensington presided. 54 years old, silver hair pulled back tight, reading glasses perched on her nose. She had the look of someone who had never doubted herself in her life. Sterling spoke first. Your Honor, the people request the defendant be held without bail. Mr. Cole is a flight risk with no significant ties to the community, no employment, and significant motivation to flee, given the severity of the charges. Ben stood, "Your Honor, my client has a 9-year-old daughter who depends on him. He has lived in Cleveland his entire life. He has never missed a court date for so much as a parking ticket. He's not a flight risk." Kensington looked at Marcus over her glasses. "Mr. Cole, do you have anything to say?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I didn't commit fraud. I'm innocent." Kensington's expression didn't change. "Everyone says that, Mr. Cole. Bail is set at $50,000 cash. Next case." The gavel fell. Marcus didn't have $50,000. Didn't have $5,000. Didn't have $500. He was going to sit in jail until the trial. Ben put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I'll try to get you a court date as soon as possible." They led him back to the holding cells. 6 weeks, Ben had said. Maybe 8 if the court was backed up. 2 months away from Lily. 2 months of her crying herself to sleep. 2 months of Mrs. Patterson trying to explain why Daddy couldn't come home. Unless he took the plea deal, 5 years instead of 15. Lily would only be 14 instead of 24 when he got out. Derek was waiting when Marcus got back to the cell. "Well, 50,000 bail. I don't have it." Derek nodded. "So you're stuck, like the rest of us." Marcus sat down heavily. His father's letter crinkled in his pocket. He pulled it out and read it again. The passphrase. The safety deposit box. "I need to see my lawyer again." Ben came back that afternoon annoyed at being summoned twice in one day. Marcus leaned forward. "One of the complainants, James Park. Can you contact him?" "Why?" "Because I think he's lying. And I think if you push him, he'll crack." Ben looked skeptical. "Marcus, you can't just accuse your accusers of lying without proof. That makes you look desperate. Please, just try. Ask him if anyone pressured him to file the complaint." Ben sighed. "Fine, but this is a long shot." 3 days later, Ben returned. His expression was different. Stunned. "Marcus, you're not going to believe this." Marcus stood up from the bunk. "What happened?" "Park wants to recant. He contacted me this morning, says he needs to talk to you." The meeting room felt smaller, with 3 people in it. James Park sat across from Marcus, a thin man in his 40s with tired eyes and an expensive suit that hung loose on his frame. Park spoke first. "Mr. Cole, I owe you an apology." Marcus waited. "The Korean translation you did for us was perfect. Better than anything our company had ever received. Our partners in Seoul praised it specifically." Park's hands shook. "But when the deal fell through for completely unrelated reasons, my supervisor needed a scapegoat. He told me to file a fraud complaint against you, or I'd be fired." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I couldn't sleep, because I have kids, and because what we did to you is wrong." Park pulled out a folder. "These are internal emails proving your translation was approved without changes, documentation from our Seoul office praising the quality, and a sworn statement from me explaining that the complaint was false." Ben grabbed the folder, hands shaking. "Mr. Park, do you understand what you're saying? You could face charges for filing a false police report." "I know, but it's the right thing to do." Park looked at Marcus. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." After Park left, Ben spread the documents across the table. "Marcus, this changes everything. If one complaint was fabricated, we can argue the others might be too. This gives us leverage. What about the trial? We still go forward, but now we have reasonable doubt. Now we have a fighting chance." Ben's expression shifted from exhausted to something approaching hope. "There's something else. I've been digging into the other 2 complainants. Richard Moss, the lawyer. He was counsel of record in a human trafficking case in 2019. Case was dismissed for lack of evidence. Marcus's pulse quickened, and Dr. Mitchell, Mercy General Hospital, was investigated in 2021 for falsifying immigration medical documents. Never charged, but the investigation was serious. Ben met Marcus's eyes. 2 of your 3 accusers have potential connections to immigration crimes, and your father's letter talks about trafficking through diplomatic channels. Someone's trying to shut me down, maybe, but we need more than speculation. We need proof." Ben closed the folder. "Your trial is in 3 weeks. Judge Kensington is assigned. And Marcus, she's tough. They call her the Hammer. She doesn't suffer fools, she doesn't believe sob stories, and she has a particular distaste for people she thinks are gaming the system." "Great, but here's the thing. If you can prove yourself, really prove yourself, she'll have no choice but to acknowledge it. Kensington may be hard, but she's fair, usually." Marcus thought about the letter, about his father listening in languages no one thought he understood, about 327 victims. "Ben, what if I demanded to be tested right there in court? Make them bring in language experts to examine me. Ben blinked. That's actually not a bad idea. It's risky as hell, but it puts the burden on the prosecution to disprove your abilities. And it makes for good theater. Can we do it? I can file a motion. But Marcus, if you fail even one language, Kensington will bury you. Marcus thought of Lily, thought of his father, thought of Derek's words, fight like hell. Do it. 2 weeks later, Marcus met Raymond Carter. Ray was in for embezzlement, a former Columbia University linguistics professor who'd been caught skimming department funds to pay gambling debts. 62 years old, gray hair, and eyes that still held sharp intelligence despite the prison jumpsuit. They were in the rec room when Derek introduced them. Ray, this is Marcus, the guy I told you about. Says he speaks 11 languages. Ray looked Marcus up and down, self-taught, learned from native speakers growing up. My father cleaned houses for diplomatic families. Interesting. Say something in Mandarin. Marcus spoke. 我从5岁开始学习语言，我的父亲为外交家庭工作。我从他们的孩子那里学到了东西。Ray's eyebrows rose. Your tones are excellent, above average even for heritage speakers, now German. Ich habe die meisten Sprachen durch Spielen und Zuhören gelernt, nicht durch formelles Studium. Russian. Я говорю на 11 языках, но не имею формального образования. Ray sat down slowly. My God, you're the real thing. Marcus felt a flicker of validation. The court doesn't think so. The court is full of credentialed idiots who think a piece of paper matters more than actual knowledge. Ray leaned forward. I heard about your case, Judge Kensington. She's a nightmare for defendants, but she's smart. And if you can prove yourself beyond doubt, she'll have to acknowledge it. My lawyer filed a motion for live testing. Kensington approved it. 11 language experts. 3 days from now. Ray's expression turned serious. Then you need to prepare, because they're not going to ask you to order coffee. They'll hit you with technical terminology, legal language, medical jargon, things you've never studied. Marcus felt the first stirrings of panic. How do I prepare for that in 72 hours? You work with me. I'll drill you on specialized vocabulary. We'll focus on the languages you're weakest in and shore them up. But Marcus Ray's gaze was intense. This won't be easy. You'll need to sleep maybe 4 hours a night. And even then, there are no guarantees. Marcus thought of his father's letter, of Lily asking when Daddy would come home. I'll do whatever it takes. For 3 days, Marcus barely slept. Ray was relentless. He produced textbooks from somewhere smuggled in through connections Marcus didn't ask about. Medical terminology in Chinese, legal contracts in German, scientific papers in Arabic. They worked in whispered sessions during rec time in the library in their cells at night. Ray would throw terms at him rapid fire. Shinji Gungsai in Mandarin, what does it mean? Myocardial infarction, heart attack. Geschäftsführer in German. Managing Director, CEO. Mustalah al-Fiqh in Arabic. Legal terminology, Islamic jurisprudence. Other inmates started gathering to watch. At first, it was curiosity. Then it became something else. Hope, maybe. Or solidarity. A bunch of men who'd been written off by society watching one of their own fight back. Derek brought Marcus extra food from the commissary. An older inmate named Thomas in for drug charges gave him aspirin for the headaches. Even the guards seemed to ease up, letting Ray and Marcus have extra library time. On the second night, Marcus hit a wall. He sat in his cell, head in his hands, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. I can't do this. There's too much. I'm going to forget everything. Ray's voice was gentle but firm. Marcus, you've been speaking these languages for decades. The knowledge is in there. We're just adding technical vocabulary to the framework you already have. You're not learning from scratch, you're expanding. What if I freeze up? What if I blank? Then you remember why you're doing this. You remember your daughter. You remember your father. Ray paused. And you remember that every person who ever looked at you and saw just a janitor's kid was wrong. You're about to prove that. Marcus took a shaky breath. Language is power. Exactly. They cannot take from you what you know. The morning of the test arrived. Marcus was led into the courtroom in handcuffs. The gallery was packed. Word had spread about the unusual hearing. Journalists lined the walls. Lily sat in the front row with Mrs. Patterson, wearing her Sunday dress, her face pale. When their eyes met, she mouthed, I love you, Daddy. Marcus mouthed back, I love you too. Judge Kensington entered and everyone stood. She took her seat, surveyed the room with those sharp eyes, and her gaze landed on Marcus with something close to disdain. This is highly irregular. Her voice cut through the room. Mr. Walsh, your client, has requested to demonstrate his linguistic abilities. I've agreed, but let me be clear. This is not a game. This is not a publicity stunt. If Mr. Cole is wasting this court's time, I will add contempt charges. Do you understand? Ben stood, yes, Your Honor. Kensington looked at Marcus. Mr. Cole, I've brought in 11 professors from various universities. Each is an expert in their respective language. They will test you rigorously. If you pass, we'll consider it as evidence in your favor. If you fail even one examination, I will view it as proof that you've been fraudulently representing your abilities. Are we clear? Marcus stood, legs shaking. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Kensington gestured to the front row where 11 people sat. Professors, please introduce yourselves. One by one they stood. Each one looked like everything Marcus wasn't credentialed, polished, confident in their expertise. Professor Linda Harrison, Mandarin Chinese specialist, PhD from Stanford, 20 years teaching experience. Professor Heinrich Weber, German language and legal terminology, University of Heidelberg, published author. Professor Rachel Goldman, Arabic Studies, Harvard, specializing in classical Arabic and Islamic texts. Professor Andrew Rosen, Hebrew and Yiddish, Yale, expert in ancient theological writings. The list went on. Russian, French, Italian, Portuguese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese. Each professor more accomplished than the last. Kensington smiled coldly. Let's begin, Professor Harrison. The first test was Mandarin. Professor Harrison handed Marcus a document, dense medical text about cardiovascular surgery. The characters swam before his eyes for a moment, panic rising. Then he heard Ray's voice in his head. You already know this? Just read. Marcus began. 冠状动脉搭桥手术是一种治疗冠心病的常见方法. His voice steadied. The pronunciation came naturally, the tones falling into place. He translated into English, without pausing, explaining the medical terms, adding context about how Chinese medical philosophy differed from Western approaches. Professor Harrison's expression shifted from skepticism to surprise. Mr. Cole, your pronunciation is exceptional. Your understanding of the medical terminology is beyond what I would expect from even advanced students. May I ask where you learned this? Marcus glanced at Lily, the Chen family. Mr. Chen was a diplomat from Beijing. His son Wei and I used to read comic books in Chinese. Wei's mother was a doctor. She'd explain medical terms while my father cleaned their house. Harrison sat down slowly, remarkable. German was next. Professor Weber handed him a commercial contract, 12 pages, dense legal language. Marcus read through it, his brain switching gears, and within 3 minutes he found it. Clause 7 and Clause 11 contradict each other. Section 7 assigns jurisdiction to Frankfurt courts. Section 11 allows the defendant to choose venue. Under German civil code, this makes the entire contract voidable. Weber, a stern man with a thick accent, actually smiled. Das ist correct. That is correct. Who taught you German contract law? The Schmidt family. Mr. Schmidt's teenage son wanted to be a lawyer. He'd practice translating contracts, and I'd help him. We'd argue about the German civil code versus American common law. One by one, Marcus passed. Arabic brought tears to Professor Goldman's eyes when he recited classical poetry and then composed an original verse in the same meter. Russian made Professor Volkov, a hard man who never smiled, actually laugh in surprised delight at Marcus's grasp of Dostoevsky's philosophical passages. French wine terminology, Italian opera, Portuguese regional dialects, Japanese writing systems, Korean honorifics, Vietnamese tones. He passed them all. By the 10th language, the courtroom had gone completely silent. Even Victoria Sterling had stopped taking notes, just watching with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Then came Professor Andrew Rosen, Hebrew. Rosen was 48, thin, with cold eyes and a tight smile. He handed Marcus a single sheet of paper. This is a philosophical treatise on justice, ancient Hebrew, very rare. Please read and translate. Marcus took the paper. The moment he saw the text, his stomach dropped. He knew these words, knew them because he'd spent 3 weeks translating this exact document 6 years ago. His hands started shaking. Mr. Cole, is there a problem? Kensington's voice had that edge again. Marcus looked up at Rosen. I've seen this before. That's impossible. This is an obscure manuscript. No, I translated this 6 years ago for an anonymous client who paid $8,000 and demanded complete confidentiality. Marcus's voice gained strength. And in 2020, Professor Rosen published an academic paper using my translation word for word without attribution. The courtroom exploded. Journalists surged forward. Rosen's face went purple. That's a lie. You're a desperate fraud trying to... My laptop is in evidence lockup. Every file I've ever worked on is there. Drafts, timestamps, email correspondence. If the court examines it, you'll see the translation dated 2018, 2 years before your paper. Kensington's gavel cracked down. Order, Mr. Walsh, is your client's laptop available? Ben was already standing. Yes, Your Honor, we can retrieve it immediately. Do it now. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Marcus sat in the defendant's chair, Rosen glaring at him from across the room, the other professors whispering among themselves. A court technician brought in the laptop, connected it to the projection system. Under Ben's direction, he navigated to Marcus's work files. There it was. Folder labeled Hebrew_translation_project_2018. Inside 47 draft files spanning 3 weeks in March and April 2018. Email exchanges with an encrypted client address. Research notes in both Hebrew and English. And the final document timestamp April 28, 2018, matching word for word the paper Rosen had published in the Journal of Semitic Studies in February 2020. Professor Weber stood up, face red with anger. Andrew, tell me this is not what it looks like. Rosen said nothing. Professor Goldman was crying. You plagiarized from an uncredentialed translator. You built your reputation on stolen work. The other professors were standing now, voices rising in outrage. The man they'd been brought here to discredit had just revealed one of their own as a fraud. Kensington's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Professor Rosen, you are dismissed from this proceeding. I will be notifying Yale University and the American Linguistic Association. Leave now. Rosen gathered his briefcase and walked out, shoulders hunched, 20 years of academic credibility, shredding with each step. Kensington turned to the remaining professors. Does anyone have doubts about Mr. Cole's linguistic abilities? Silence. Then Professor Harrison stood. Your Honor, in 25 years of assessing language proficiency, I have never witnessed anything like what I saw today. Mr. Cole doesn't just speak these languages, he embodies them. His knowledge encompasses cultural context, historical nuance, emotional resonance. He is without question one of the most remarkable linguists I've ever encountered. The other professors nodded. One by one they stood in agreement. Kensington looked at Victoria Sterling, counselor. Sterling stood slowly. Marcus could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Park had recanted. Marcus had just proven his abilities beyond any doubt. And one of her star witnesses, the expert evaluation itself, had just turned into a defense victory. Your Honor, in light of today's developments and considering that 2 of 3 complainants have recanted their statements with evidence of coercion, the people request permission to withdraw all charges. The courtroom erupted. Applause shouts, reporters rushing for the doors. Marcus couldn't process it, couldn't breathe. Kensington's gavel came down hard. Order, I will have order. The room quieted. Kensington removed her glasses, and for the first time, Marcus saw something in her eyes that might have been shame. Mr. Cole, this court owes you an apology. The words hung in the air. I looked at your background and made assumptions. I saw where you came from and believed I knew who you were. I allowed prejudice I didn't even recognize I possessed to cloud my judgment. Her voice softened slightly. You came into my courtroom asking for a chance to prove yourself, and I mocked you. I laughed at you in front of hundreds of people. I threatened you with additional prison time for having the audacity to defend yourself. Kensington put her glasses back on, but her hands trembled slightly. That was wrong. Legally, ethically, and morally wrong. You deserve better from this court. You deserve better from me. She straightened. All charges against Marcus James Cole are hereby dismissed. Mr. Cole, you are free to go. Your personal effects will be returned immediately. The gavel fell one final time. Lily's scream of joy pierced the courtroom. She jumped over the railing, Mrs. Patterson trying to grab her, and crashed into Marcus's arms. He held his daughter, this small person who was his entire world, and finally let himself cry. Ben Walsh was there, hugging them both. Derek and Ray watching from the gallery with huge grins. The professors gathering around, offering cards, invitations to speak at conferences. But Marcus barely noticed. He just held Lily and whispered, I'm home, baby. Daddy's home. They walked out of the courthouse into cold Cleveland sunshine. Lily held his hand, chattering about school and Mrs. Patterson's cat and how she'd learned a new song in Spanish. At the bottom of the steps, a woman waited. Late 60s, silver hair, expensive but understated clothes. She looked out of place among the courthouse regulars. Mr. Cole, Marcus stopped. Something about her voice triggered recognition from his father's letter. I'm Margaret Morrison. His breath caught. Margaret glanced at Lily, then back at Marcus. I knew your father very well. He worked for my family the last 5 years of his life. And there are things you need to know, things he asked me to tell you when you were ready. She held out an envelope, old and worn. He gave me this 2 weeks before he died, made me promise to keep it safe until the time was right, until you'd proven to the world who you really are. Marcus took the envelope with shaking hands. Margaret's eyes were sad. Your father wasn't just a janitor, Marcus. He was the bravest man I ever knew. He discovered something terrible, and when he tried to expose it, they came for him, the heart attack. Wasn't a heart attack. Marcus's voice was flat. The official report said it was, but Marcus, they never found a body. The memorial service was arranged by people I didn't know. The hospital records disappeared. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, who is this lady? Marcus knelt down. Go back to Mrs. Patterson for just a minute, okay? I need to talk to this lady. Lily ran back up the steps. Marcus stood and faced Margaret. What did my father find? A network, using diplomatic immunity to move people across borders, victims being trafficked under the cover of official business. Your father heard things in languages they thought no one could understand. He documented everything for 25 years. Names, dates, routes. She gestured to the envelope. It's all in there where the evidence is hidden, how to access it, and a warning. What kind of warning? Margaret's voice dropped. The people your father was investigating are still out there. And now that you've become famous, the man who speaks 11 languages, who defeated the system, they're going to notice you. They're going to wonder if you know what your father knew. Marcus thought about the fraud charges. 3 separate complaints from people who just happened to have connections to immigration crimes. James Park, who'd been coerced. Richard Moss, with a trafficking case in his past. Dr. Mitchell, whose hospital had been investigated for document fraud. They already know. The charges someone paid them to shut me down. Probably, which means you have a choice. Margaret met his eyes. Walk away, raise your daughter, live quietly, pretend you never got this letter. Or finish what your father started. Expose them. Save the victims. But know that if you do, your life will never be the same. You'll be a target. Forever. Marcus looked up at the courthouse steps. Lily was showing Mrs. Patterson something, laughing. 9 years old, innocent, safe. His father had chosen to fight and it had killed him, or at least made him disappear. Did Marcus have the right to make the same choice when he had a daughter to protect? He opened the envelope. Inside was a single letter in David's careful handwriting. Son, if you're reading this, you've shown the world who you are. I'm proud of you. I was always proud of you. Now you need to decide who you want to be. The evidence is in Boston, First National Bank, Box 4721. Passphrase, language is the key they cannot take. Whatever you choose, I'll understand. Love, Dad. Asterisk. Marcus folded the letter and looked at Margaret. I need to think about this. Of course, when you're ready, call me. She handed him a card. But Marcus, don't wait too long. Every day that evidence sits hidden is another day those victims don't get justice. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Marcus stood alone on the courthouse steps, his father's letter in one hand, his freedom in the other, and a choice that would define the rest of his life. Lily came running back, grabbing his hand. Can we go home now, Daddy? Can we have pizza? Mrs. Patterson said, if you came home, we could have pizza. Marcus looked down at his daughter's hopeful face. Language is power. They cannot take from you what you know. Use it to be more than they expect. His father's words, his father's mission, his father's unfinished fight. Yeah, baby, let's go home. But even as he said it, Marcus knew the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The apartment felt different when Marcus walked through the door. Same worn couch, same water stain on the ceiling, same stack of Lily's drawings on the refrigerator. But everything had shifted. The air itself seemed charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Mrs. Patterson had made pot roast. The smell filled the small kitchen, warm and familiar. Lily sat at the table, kicking her feet, eyes bright with relief. For 2 hours, Marcus tried to be present, tried to laugh at Lily's stories about her teacher's new haircut, tried to focus on the normalcy of mashed potatoes and green beans. But his father's letter burned in his pocket like a hot coal. After dinner, after Lily brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, Marcus sat beside her. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one Sarah had bought her 5th birthday. Daddy, you're not going away again, right? The question hit like a fist to the sternum. No, baby, I'm staying right here. Promise. Marcus thought about the letter, about Boston, about 327 victims waiting for someone to speak for them. He drew an X over his heart, crossed my heart, hoped to fly, stick a needle in my eye. Their ritual, their sacred promise, the one they'd made after Sarah's funeral when Lily had nightmares every night for 6 months. Lily smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, evened out. Marcus watched her sleep, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her hand curled around the rabbit's ear. Then he went to the kitchen and opened the letter again. The words hadn't changed. Boston, First National Bank, Box 4721, 25 years of evidence, 327 victims. His phone buzzed, unknown number. Marcus stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Mr. Cole, this is Agent Vincent Cross, FBI. We need to talk about your father. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? We've been monitoring your case. The fraud charges, the sudden dismissal, and the fact that Margaret Morrison approached you outside the courthouse. Cross's voice was calm, professional. I know about David Cole. I know what he was investigating. And I know you just received information about evidence he hid. You're watching me. We're protecting you. There's a difference. A pause. Mr. Cole, can we meet tonight? There are things you need to know before you make any decisions. Marcus looked at Lily's closed bedroom door where, Edgewater Park, North parking lot, 1 hour. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness weighing options. This could be a trap. Cross could be part of whatever network his father had uncovered. Or he could be legitimate, another person trying to finish what David had started. Either way, Marcus needed answers. He checked on Lily one more time, left a note for Mrs. Patterson, who was asleep on the couch, and drove to the park. Edgewater sat on Lake Erie's shore, cold wind whipping off black water. The parking lot was empty except for one sedan. A man leaned against the hood, tall, maybe 42, with the bearing of someone who'd spent years learning to read danger in shadows. Marcus approached slowly. The man straightened, and even in the dim light from the street lamp, his eyes were sharp. Mr. Cole, I'm Vincent Cross. He showed a badge, FBI credentials that looked legitimate. Thank you for coming. You said you know about my father. Cross gestured to a bench overlooking the water. David Cole was one of the best informants we ever had. For 3 years, he fed us intelligence on a trafficking network operating through diplomatic channels. Information no one else could access because no one else could understand the conversations happening in plain sight. Marcus sat. The bench was cold through his jeans. If you were working with him, why didn't you protect him? We tried. Cross's jaw tightened. We had a plan to extract him, bring him into witness protection. But someone leaked our timeline. By the time we got to his apartment, he was gone. No signs of struggle, no body, just gone. The heart attack was a cover story. We believed so, but without a body, without evidence of foul play, there was nothing we could do. The case went cold. Cross turned to face Marcus directly. Until 2 months ago, when you were arrested on fraud charges that made no sense. 3 complaints from people with connections to immigration crimes. That's not coincidence. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. They tried to shut me down before I could find what my father hid. That's our theory. And now that you've been cleared, now that you're famous, the man who speaks 11 languages and beat the system, you're even more visible, more dangerous to them. Who are they? Cross pulled out a folder. We don't know all the players. That's why we needed David's evidence. He had names, dates, routes, documentation we could never get through traditional channels because diplomatic immunity is a shield we can't penetrate. He opened the folder. Photos spilled out. Grainy surveillance shots of men in expensive suits. Women boarding private planes. Documents with official seals. This is what we know. A network that's been operating for at least 30 years. They use diplomatic credentials to move people across borders. Victims are trafficked under the cover of official business. By the time local law enforcement catches wind of something wrong, the diplomats have immunity and the victims have disappeared. Marcus looked at the photos. Faceless crimes, anonymous suffering. My father documented 327 victims. Over 25 years, that's just what he could confirm. We estimate the real number is higher, much higher. Cross closed the folder. The evidence he collected is the only thing that can bring these people down. Without it, they're untouchable. So you want me to go to Boston, get the evidence, hand it over to you? Yes, but I need you to understand what you're risking. The moment you access that safety deposit box, you become a target. These people have killed to protect their operation. They'll kill again. Marcus thought of Lily sleeping in her bed, of the promise he'd just made. Crossed my heart. What if I say no? What if I walk away? Cross was quiet for a long moment. Then 327 victims never get justice. Your father's death means nothing. And the network continues operating, destroying lives because the only person who could stop them chose safety over truth. The words stung because they were fair. Marcus walked to the railing overlooking the lake. Cold spray misted his face. I have a daughter, 9 years old. She already lost her mother. I can't. We'll protect her. Safe house 24/7 security. Whatever it takes. Cross joined him at the railing. Mr. Cole, I've been working trafficking cases for 15 years. I've seen things that haunt me. Children, families torn apart, people treated like cargo, and every case that goes nowhere because the perpetrators have money and connections and immunity, it eats at you. His voice roughened. Your father gave us hope. He showed us that maybe finally we could build a case strong enough to break through the diplomatic shield. When he disappeared, that hope died. But now you have a chance to resurrect it. Marcus turned, and if I get the evidence, what then? You arrest these people and they lawyer up. Diplomatic immunity gets invoked. Nothing changes. Not if we coordinate with Interpol, not if we bring this public at the right moment with the right evidence. Cross's eyes were intense. Your father understood something important. Secrets lose their power when you shine a light on them. These people operate in shadows. Force them into daylight and watch how fast their protection crumbles. Marcus wanted to believe it, wanted to think that doing the right thing would lead to justice and safety in a world where Lily could grow up without nightmares. But he learned in that courtroom that the system didn't care about truth as much as it cared about credentials and appearances and maintaining order. I need to think about it. Cross handed him a card. Call me when you decide. But Mr. Cole, don't take too long. Every day that evidence stays hidden is another day they're operating. Another day victims are suffering. Marcus drove home through empty streets. Cleveland at night felt like a different city. Darker, more uncertain. He parked outside the apartment building and sat in the car engine, ticking as it cooled. Through the second-floor window, he could see the soft glow of the nightlight in Lily's room. She'd been afraid of the dark since Sarah died. Marcus had bought her that nightlight shaped like a star, and every night they'd make wishes on it together. What would Sarah say if she were here? She'd been the brave one, the one who ran toward problems instead of away from them. A social worker who'd spent her career fighting for kids in the foster system, kids nobody else wanted to help. She would have told him to go to Boston, to finish what his father started, to be the man Lily needed to see someone who stood up when it mattered. But Sarah had also promised Lily she'd always be there. And then a drunk driver had shattered that promise into 1,000 pieces. Marcus climbed the stairs slowly. Mrs. Patterson was awake, knitting in the living room. She had a nightmare about an hour ago. Called for you. I told her you'd gone to get milk. The old woman's eyes were shrewd. You going somewhere, Marcus? I don't know yet. That FBI man who called earlier. This about your father? Marcus nodded. Mrs. Patterson set down her knitting. I knew David Cole for 40 years. He was a good man, a quiet man, but there was steel in him. She looked at Marcus. Whatever he left you, whatever choice you're facing, he wouldn't have done it if he didn't believe you could handle it. What if I can't? What if I make the wrong choice and Lily pays for it? Mrs. Patterson stood, joints creaking. Lily's going to pay either way, Marcus. Either she pays by growing up with a father who was too afraid to do what's right, or she pays by having a father who stood up when it mattered, even though it was hard. She patted his shoulder. Get some sleep. Answers look different in daylight. But Marcus didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lily's soft breathing through the thin wall. Thinking about his father scrubbing floors while diplomats discussed horrors in languages they thought were secret. Thinking about Ray's words in that cell. You're about to prove that being poor doesn't mean being powerless. Morning came too fast. Lily bounded into his room at 7, jumping on the bed. Daddy, you're still here. The joy in her voice broke something in his chest. Of course I'm here, baby. Where else would I be? They made pancakes together. Lily insisted on adding chocolate chips, and Marcus didn't argue. They ate at the table while cartoons played on the old TV, and for a few minutes, everything felt normal. Then Lily looked at him with those eyes, Sarah's eyes, and asked, Daddy, are you sad? Marcus swallowed hard. A little bit, yeah. About Grandpa? He nodded. Lily climbed into his lap, her small arms wrapping around his neck. Mrs. Patterson says Grandpa was a hero, that he helped people when he was alive. She pulled back to look at him. Is that true? Yes, he helped a lot of people, people who couldn't help themselves. Then you should be happy, because helping people is good even if it's hard. 9 years old. How did she understand things that most adults couldn't grasp? Marcus hugged her tight. You're absolutely right, kiddo. You're so smart. I know. She grinned and wriggled free. Can we go to the park? Later, I want to show you how high I can swing now. Maybe. I have to make some phone calls first. He called Ben Walsh at 10. The lawyer picked up on the second ring, sounding harried. Marcus, how are you holding up? I need your help with something. Not legal advice. Background research. Marcus explained about the complaints about Richard Moss and Dr. Mitchell's potential connections to immigration crimes. Ben was quiet then. You're digging into this. After everything that just happened, you're going after them. I need to know if the fraud charges were really about shutting me down. Marcus, these are dangerous people. If they were willing to fabricate charges to stop you, what else are they willing to do? That's what I need to find out. Ben sighed, give me 48 hours. I'll see what I can uncover, but promise me you'll be careful. After hanging up, Marcus called Cross. I'm going to Boston, but I need guarantees about Lily. Not a safe house. She stays with Mrs. Patterson in Cleveland, but with FBI protection. Guards she never sees. You keep her normal life intact. Cross didn't hesitate. Done. When can you leave? Tomorrow. I need to talk to my daughter first. That afternoon, Marcus took Lily to the park. She ran ahead, her laughter carrying on the cold wind as she climbed the jungle gym. He pushed her on the swings, watching her fly higher and higher, fearless in the way only children could be. When they sat on the bench eating ice cream despite the November chill, Lily looked at him seriously. You have to go away again, don't you? Marcus's throat closed. She was too perceptive, too smart. Just for a few days, I have to take care of something important. Something Grandpa left for me. Will you come back? I promise, cross my heart. Lily thought about this while licking her ice cream cone. Is it dangerous? A little bit, but I'll be very careful. Like Mom was careful, the question landed like a punch. Sarah had been careful, had worn her seatbelt, had been driving the speed limit, had done everything right. And still a drunk driver had changed everything in one terrible second. Marcus knelt in front of his daughter, Lily. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to come home to you. And I can promise that what I'm doing matters. That it'll help people who really need help. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to be a hero. I just want you to be my daddy. I know, baby, I know. He pulled her close. But sometimes being a good daddy means doing hard things. Means standing up for what's right even when it's scary. Did Grandpa teach you that? Marcus nodded against her hair. Yeah, he did. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Marcus packed a small bag. One change of clothes. His father's letter. The card Margaret Morrison had given him. He left a note on the kitchen table for Mrs. Patterson, explaining where he was going and when he'd be back. Then he sat in Lily's doorway and watched her sleep. The star nightlight cast soft shadows across her face. She looked so small, so vulnerable. If he didn't come back, what would happen to her? Mrs. Patterson was 70 in good health but not young. Lily had no other family. She'd end up in the system Sarah had fought so hard to reform. Marcus stood to leave, but something made him pause. He walked to Lily's bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered, I love you more than anything in this world. Never forget that. The bus to Boston left at 6 in the morning. Marcus couldn't risk flying too easy to track too much security that could be compromised. He bought a ticket with cash and took a window seat in the back. The journey took 14 hours. Marcus watched America slide by through dirty glass. Small towns, strip malls, rest stops where families stretched their legs and argued about directions. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the darkness that moved beneath the surface. He tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father's face. David Cole in his janitor's uniform pushing a mop cart through marble hallways. Invisible, overlooked, but listening, always listening. How many conversations had David overheard? How many times had he stood in a corner emptying trash, while diplomats discussed routes and payments and logistics, never suspecting the janitor understood every word? His father had been brave in a way Marcus was only beginning to comprehend. To gather evidence for 25 years, knowing that discovery meant death. To continue anyway because the alternative was letting evil prosper unchallenged. Boston appeared through the window at dusk. The city glowed against the darkening sky, modern towers mixed with historic brick. Marcus got off at South Station, shouldered his bag, and walked. First National Bank sat in the financial district, an old building trying to look contemporary with recent renovations. Marcus stood across the street studying it. Security cameras, guards inside, normal banking operations on the surface. But somewhere in that building's vault was his father's legacy, 25 years of courage compressed into a safety deposit box. He checked into a cheap motel 6 blocks away. The room smelled like cigarettes and desperation. He called Cross from the burner phone he'd bought at a gas station. "I'm here." "Good. We have a team in position. Plainclothes surveillance on the bank and your motel. You won't see them, but they're there." "What about Lily?" "2 agents watching Mrs. Patterson's building. Your daughter went to school this morning, came home at 3:15, did homework, had dinner. She's fine." The specificity was both comforting and unsettling. They were watching everything. "Tomorrow morning I go to the bank. We'll be ready, but Marcus, once you access that box, there's no going back. They'll know, and they'll come for you." Marcus thought about Lily's question. "Will you come back?" "I understand." He hung up and lay on the sagging mattress. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by dreams of his father trapped in dark rooms calling for help that never came. Morning broke gray and cold. Marcus showered in the motel's dingy bathroom, dressed, and walked to the bank. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs. The lobby was quiet, a few early customers conducting business, tellers behind bulletproof glass. Everything normal and ordinary. Marcus approached the desk. "I need to access a safety deposit box." The woman smiled professionally. "Of course. Box number and identification, please." "Box 4721. But it's under David Cole's name. I'm his son. He passed away and he left instructions for me to access it." Her smile faltered slightly. "I'll need to verify. One moment." She made a call, spoke in low tones, hung up and gestured to a man in a suit who'd appeared from a back office. "Mr. Cole, I'm Thomas Brennan, vault manager. If you'll follow me, please." They walked through corridors that grew progressively more secure. Card readers, biometric scanners, finally a massive steel door that required 2 keys to open. Inside the vault was quiet, temperature-controlled rows upon rows of boxes. Brennan consulted a computer. Box 4721 was registered to David Cole in 1998. The terms specify access by Marcus James Cole upon presentation of biometric verification and verbal passphrase. He gestured to a scanner. "Your thumb, please." Marcus pressed his thumb to the cool glass. The machine beeped. Brennan's eyebrows rose. Biometric match confirmed. Now the passphrase. Marcus's mouth was dry. His father's words. The lesson that had defined his childhood. Language is the key they cannot take. Green light. The computer chimed approval. Brennan pulled the box from its slot, a long metal container heavier than Marcus expected. He carried it to a private viewing room and set it on the table. "Take all the time you need. Press the button when you're finished." The door closed. Marcus was alone. He lifted the lid. Inside, organized with David's meticulous care, 12 USB drives in labeled plastic cases. Years marked on each one, 1998 to 2022. 4 rolled microfilms in protective tubes, and a photograph faded but clear. His father, maybe 45 years old, standing beside a woman Marcus didn't recognize. She was in her mid-30s, dark hair, sad eyes. They stood in front of a building Marcus couldn't identify. On the back, written in David's hand, "Elena and I, Washington, D.C., 2008. The day we decided to fight together." Beneath the photo, another letter, newer paper, dated 2 weeks before David's disappearance. "Marcus, if you've opened this, you've proven yourself to the world. I'm proud beyond words. But now comes the harder choice. This evidence represents 25 years of my life. 327 victims I could document, though I know there were more I couldn't reach. The woman in the photo is Elena Martinez. She was a survivor who escaped and dedicated her life to helping others. She worked with me for 10 years until she was murdered in 2015. They made it look like a mugging. I knew better. Son, the names on these drives include diplomats from a dozen countries, lawyers who facilitate the paperwork, doctors who falsify medical records, businessmen who provide transportation. At the center of it all is a man I could never identify. Everyone calls him the Wolf. He's the one who makes it all work, the one who has connections in every government, every agency. The evidence I gathered can bring down the network, but it can't touch the Wolf directly. Not yet. I don't know who he is. If you choose to continue this fight, be careful. Trust Agent Vincent Cross, he's one of the good ones. But trust no one else until you're sure. They have people everywhere. I wish I could protect you from this. Wish I could have finished it myself. But they got to me first. I don't know how much time I have left. Just know that I love you, that you were the best thing in my life, and that whatever you choose, I'll understand. The passphrase to decrypt the drives is the date your mother died. She would have been proud of you too. Love always, Dad, asterisk. Marcus's hands shook as he read the letter twice. 3 times, Elena's murder. The wolf. His mother's death date as an encryption key. He pulled out his phone, photographed everything. The drives, the microfilm, the letters, the picture. If something happened to him if he didn't make it out of Boston, at least there would be a record. Then he loaded everything into his backpack and pressed the button. Brennan returned, all finished. Yes, thank you. Walking out of the bank felt like walking through deep water. Every step took effort. The morning sun was too bright, the street too exposed. Marcus's skin crawled with the sensation of being watched. He made it half a block before the car pulled up beside him. Black sedan, tinted windows. The back door opened. Mr. Cole, get in. We need to talk. The voice was accented. Russian, maybe? Or Eastern European. Marcus's instinct screamed run, but there were people on the sidewalk, cars in the street. If he ran, someone might get hurt. He got in the car. The man beside him was in his 50s, gray hair, expensive suit. Cold eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. The driver pulled into traffic smoothly. My name is Nikolai Volkov. I represent certain interests who are very concerned about what you just retrieved from that bank. Marcus's heart hammered. I don't know what you're talking about. Volkov smiled without warmth. Please, we've been watching you since you left Cleveland. We know about Agent Cross. We know about the FBI surveillance team. And we know about your father's evidence. He pulled out a tablet, swiped, showed Marcus a video. Lily at school playing on the playground with her friends. The timestamp was from 40 minutes ago. Your daughter is beautiful. Lily, yes, 9 years old. She likes chocolate chip pancakes and she's afraid of the dark. Marcus lunged, but Volkov was faster. He pressed something against Marcus's ribs, sharp, painful. A taser voltage dialed low enough to hurt without incapacitating. Calm yourself. I'm not here to hurt you or her. I'm here to offer you a choice. Marcus's vision cleared slowly. Volkov pocketed the taser. Give me the drives and the microfilm. Walk away from this. Go back to Cleveland. Raise your daughter live quietly. No one gets hurt. You have my word. Your word. Marcus's voice was hoarse. The word of a man who just threatened my daughter. I didn't threaten. I informed. There's a difference. Volkov leaned back. Your father made the same mistake you're making. He thought he could fight us. Thought documentation would somehow matter. It didn't. He's gone. The operation continues. Nothing changed. Where is he? What did you do to my father? Volkov's expression didn't shift. I gave him the same choice I'm giving you. He made the wrong decision. Don't repeat his mistake. The car stopped. They were at Marcus's motel. Volkov opened the door. You have 24 hours. Leave the bag in your room. Walk away, or stay and watch everything you love burn. He handed Marcus a phone. When you're ready to do the smart thing, call the number programmed in. Otherwise, don't bother running. We'll find you, and your daughter will end up in the same pipeline your father spent 25 years documenting. Marcus stumbled out of the car. It drove away, smoothly disappearing into Boston traffic. He made it to his room on autopilot, locked the door, collapsed against it. His whole body shook. The backpack felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. 24 hours. Give up the evidence or Lily becomes a victim. His phone rang. Cross. Marcus, are you all right? Our team lost visual on you for 15 minutes. What happened? Marcus explained, voice flat. When he finished, Cross swore softly. Nikolai Volkov. We've had our eye on him for years but could never make anything stick. He's connected to Russian diplomatic circles, but he's been a U.S. bomb. Citizen for 30 years. Clean record on paper. Ghost in practice. He knows about Lily. Knows where she is. Knows her routine. We'll move her immediately. Safe house under assumed names. She'll be completely... No. Marcus's voice was hard. Moving her tips them off that I'm not complying. They'll panic. Strike before you can protect her properly. Then what do you want to do? Marcus looked at the backpack, at his father's life work, at the choice that would define everything. I'm calling their bluff. I've set up an automated email system if I don't check in every 8 hours. Encrypted copies of everything go to the New York Times, Washington Post, and Associated Press automatically. Volkov moves against Lily. The evidence goes public within the hour. Cross was quiet. That's dangerous. You're betting they'll value secrecy over revenge. My father bet his life that someone would eventually expose them. I'm betting mine that they're more afraid of publicity than they are angry at me. And if you're wrong, Marcus thought of Lily's question. Will you come back? Thought of Sarah dying because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Thought of Elena Martinez murdered on a street corner for helping victims escape. If I'm wrong, at least the truth gets out. At least those 327 victims get their voices heard. Cross exhaled slowly. All right, what do you need from us? Protection for Lily. Real protection, not visible but absolute. In a press conference, international media, I'm going to do what my father couldn't. I'm going to shine so much light on this that they can't make me disappear without everyone noticing. That'll make you a target for the rest of your life. I'm already a target. At least this way I'm a target they can't afford to eliminate. They spent the next 6 hours planning. Cross coordinated with Interpol, with prosecutors in multiple countries, with FBI brass who were skeptical but intrigued. Marcus decrypted the drives using his mother's death date, April 12, 1992, and began cataloging the evidence. Names, dates, routes, testimony transcripts from victims Elena had helped escape, financial records showing payments flowing through shell corporations, photos of diplomats meeting with known traffickers, 25 years of meticulous documentation. His father had been brilliant, had cross-referenced everything, built a case so airtight that even the best lawyers would struggle to create doubt. But reading the victim testimonies broke something in Marcus. Children as young as 6, teenagers who'd been promised legitimate work abroad, women who'd answered ads for domestic helpers and ended up enslaved. The ages, nationalities, circumstances varied. The suffering was universal. One testimony stood out. A girl named Maria, 14, from Honduras, trafficked at 12, held for 2 years in a house in Maryland while being forced to work in agricultural fields 16 hours a day. She'd escaped when David Cole had overheard her captors discussing moving her to a new location. He'd slipped her a note in Spanish with an address for a victim's shelter and enough cash for a bus ticket. Maria's statement ended, "I never learned the janitor's name, but he saved my life. He saw me when everyone else looked through me like I was invisible. I hope someday I can thank him." Shrisk. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes. His father had done this, had risked everything repeatedly to help people he'd never meet again, people whose names he didn't even know. Ben Walsh called at 8 p.m. "Marcus, you need to hear this. I did background on Richard Moss and Dr. Mitchell like you asked. And Moss was retained as legal counsel for a trafficking case in 2019. The defendant was a mid-level diplomat from an Eastern European country. Case was dismissed when the diplomat invoked immunity and left the country. But the interesting part, the FBI had been building a case against the diplomat for 2 years. Someone leaked their investigation timeline to the defense. Marcus's stomach tightened. Someone inside law enforcement. That's the implication. And Dr. Mitchell, Mercy General, was investigated for providing falsified health certificates for visa applications. The investigation stalled when key witnesses recanted their testimony. One of those witnesses died in a car accident 6 months later. Let me guess, accident looks suspicious. Police ruled it accidental, but there were questions. Brake line failure on a car that had just been serviced. Ben paused. "Marcus, these people are connected to things way above my pay grade. Whatever you're planning, please be careful." After hanging up, Marcus stood at the motel window looking out at Boston's skyline. Somewhere in this city, Volkov was waiting for his answer. Somewhere in Cleveland, Lily was probably already asleep, unaware that her father was making choices that would alter her life forever. His phone buzzed. A text from the number Volkov had given him. 16 hours remaining. Choose wisely. Marcus typed back, "I've already chosen. Check tomorrow's news." He powered off the phone, removed the battery, threw both in the trash. Then he called Cross, "Set up the press conference tomorrow, noon, as public as possible." "Marcus, once you do this, there's no walking it back." "I know. But my father spent 25 years gathering evidence in silence. Someone needs to speak it out loud." That night, Marcus barely slept. He reviewed the testimony transcripts, memorizing names and faces. Prepared himself for questions from reporters. Tried not to think about the look on Lily's face when she found out her father had become a very public target. Around 3 a.m., his motel door exploded inward. 4 men in tactical gear, moving fast and silent. Marcus rolled off the bed, reaching for the backpack, but they were on him in seconds. A bag over his head, zip ties around his wrists. He was lifted, carried, thrown into a vehicle. The ride lasted maybe 10 minutes. When they pulled him out, the bag came off. He was in a warehouse, empty, cold. One chair in the middle of the space under a single hanging bulb. Volkov stood in the shadows. I gave you 24 hours, Mr. Cole. You had 16 left. But I read your text, saw the defiance. He stepped into the light. So I'm going to explain something to you, something your father never understood. Volkov gestured and one of the men brought over a laptop. He opened it, turned it to face Marcus. Security camera footage from Mrs. Patterson's building. Timestamp from 40 minutes ago. Two men in FBI windbreakers standing outside, watching. Then the camera went black. Your FBI protection is competent, but we're better. My men are inside the building now. They won't hurt the old woman or your daughter. Not yet. But they could, at any moment. One phone call from me. Marcus strained against the zip ties. If you touch her, you'll do what you have no leverage, no power. Your father thought documentation mattered, thought truth was a weapon. It isn't. Power is a weapon, and we have it. Volkov leaned down, his face inches from Marcus's. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cancel the press conference. You're going to hand over the drives. You're going to disappear for a while. We'll provide you with a new identity, a new city. Your daughter will believe you abandoned her. It will hurt, but she'll survive. Better to grow up without a father than to become what we make victims into. Marcus's mind raced. The men in FBI gear on the camera, were they really Volkov's people who'd neutralized the real FBI? Or was the footage fake, designed to make Marcus think Lily was in immediate danger? He made a choice. You're lying. If your men were really in that building, you'd have shown me footage of Lily's room. Proof you had access. All you showed me was a hallway camera going dark. That's not proof of anything except that you can hack security systems. Volkov's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. You're willing to gamble your daughter's life on that theory. I'm willing to trust that the FBI is better at their job than you think. And I'm willing to bet that you're more afraid of public exposure than you are confident in your ability to hurt my family. Bold. Stupid, but bold. Volkov straightened. Let me tell you what happened to your father, Marcus, since you seem determined to follow in his footsteps. He pulled up a chair, sat facing Marcus like they were having a casual conversation. David Cole was a persistent man. For 3 years, he fed information to the FBI, built cases, named names, and we tolerated it because we always knew where he was, what he knew. We had people inside the bureau feeding us updates. When it became clear the FBI was actually going to act on his evidence, we simply removed him from the equation. Marcus's heart hammered. You killed him. We relocated him. Eastern Europe, a facility where he couldn't communicate with anyone. No torture, no melodrama, just isolation and time. Volkov's voice was matter of fact. He lived 11 months. His heart gave out naturally. Stress, age, poor health. We didn't even have to lift a finger. The words hit like physical blows. His father alone in some cell for 11 months. Dying slowly, knowing he'd failed. You're lying. Why would I lie? Your father is dead, Marcus. Has been for 3 years. The evidence he gathered is useless because we've changed all our routes, all our contacts. The people named on those drives either died or retired or were moved to positions where they're no longer useful to us. Volkov stood. So even if you go public tomorrow, even if you hand everything to the FBI, you'll accomplish nothing except making yourself and your daughter targets for the rest of your short lives. He nodded to his men. They cut Marcus's zip ties. You're free to go. Call your press conference. Shout your truth from the rooftops. We'll be watching. And when the dust settles and nothing changes, when the diplomats invoke immunity and the cases get dismissed and the operation continues, you'll understand what your father learned too late. Volkov walked towards the exit, then paused. Power isn't in documentation, Mr. Cole. It's in connections, in knowing who to pay and who to threaten and who to eliminate. Your father had knowledge. We have power. Guess which one matters more? The warehouse door clanged shut. Marcus was alone. Marcus found his way out of the warehouse on unsteady legs. The Boston docks stretched around him, shipping containers, stacked like metal mountains, the smell of salt and diesel thick in the pre-dawn air. He walked until he found a payphone, hands shaking as he dialed Cross. They took me. Volkov, he told me, Marcus's voice cracked. He told me what happened to my father. Cross was silent for 3 seconds. That felt like hours. Where are you? Pier 47, near the old shipping yards. Stay there, I'm sending a car. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat in the back of an unmarked FBI vehicle, wrapped in a thermal blanket, despite the heat blasting from the vents. Cross climbed in beside him. Lily's fine. I had 4 agents rotate in after midnight. Your building's locked down tight. Cross's face was grim. But we have a problem. Someone inside my office knew about the surveillance rotation schedule, knew exactly when to pull that camera feed. You have a leak. We have a goddamn pipeline. Cross rubbed his face. Volkov wasn't bluffing about having people inside. I've suspected it for years, but proving it is another matter entirely. Marcus pulled the backpack closer. He said my father lived 11 months in some facility in Eastern Europe. Said his heart gave out from stress. Cross looked away, jaw tight. We suspected something like that. There were reports from Interpol about an unidentified American being held at a private medical facility in Bulgaria. By the time we got clearance to investigate, the facility was empty. No records, no bodies, nothing. So my father died alone in a cell while you people did paperwork. The words came out harsh, unfair. Cross took them without flinching. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. We failed him. We fail a lot of people because we play by rules they ignore. He met Marcus's eyes. But you have a chance to make sure his death meant something. The press conference is in 6 hours. United Nations Plaza in New York. 50 countries sending representatives. If you're still willing. Marcus thought about Volkov's words. Power versus knowledge. Connections versus truth. The old calculation that had kept evil thriving for centuries. I'm willing, but I need something first. Name it. I need to see Lily. Need to explain what's about to happen, what her life is going to become. Cross-checked his watch. There's a helicopter fueling at Logan Airport. It can have you in Cleveland in 90 minutes. But Marcus, if you go back there, if Volkov's people are watching, let them watch. Let them see me choose my daughter over their threats. The helicopter ride was loud, insulated. Marcus stared down at America passing beneath him in the gray light of dawn. Cities waking up, people starting their days with coffee and traffic jams and mundane worries. Normal life, the kind he'd had 6 weeks ago before FBI agents knocked on his door. That life was gone. Volkov had taken it the moment he'd revealed the truth about David Cole's death. There was no going back to normal when you knew what Marcus knew, when you carried what he carried in the backpack pressed against his chest. They landed on the roof of the FBI field office in Cleveland. Cross had called ahead. Mrs. Patterson was bringing Lily in under protective escort. Marcus waited in a conference room, pacing, trying to figure out how to explain to a 9-year-old that her father was about to become famous and hunted in equal measure. The door opened. Lily ran in still in her pajamas under a hastily thrown-on coat, her face pale with fear. Daddy? He caught her, held her tight enough to hurt. She was crying, her small body shaking. They said you were in danger, that bad people were trying to hurt you. Mrs. Patterson was so scared, and I didn't know where you were, and shh, I'm okay, I'm right here. Marcus carried her to a chair, sat with her in his lap like she was 3 instead of 9. But baby, I need to talk to you about something important. Something that's going to change our lives. Lily pulled back, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. Are you going away again? Not like before, but I'm going to do something today that's going to make me famous, I guess. People are going to know my name. Reporters are going to want to talk to me. And there are some bad people who won't be happy about what I'm doing. What are you doing? How to explain trafficking and diplomatic immunity and corruption to a 4th grader. Grandpa discovered that some very powerful people were hurting other people. Children mostly. Taking them from their families and making them work or doing bad things to them. Grandpa spent his whole life collecting proof. And now I'm going to show that proof to the world so the bad people get punished. Lily's eyes were huge, like superheroes stopping bad guys. Marcus almost laughed. Almost sort of, but in real life, stopping bad guys is harder. And sometimes the people trying to stop them get hurt. That's why we have FBI agents protecting us. That's why you might have to stay with Mrs. Patterson for a while longer, or maybe go to a special safe place. I don't want to go to a safe place. I want to stay with you. I know, baby, I want that too. But the most important thing, the only thing that matters, is that you're safe. And sometimes keeping you safe means we have to be apart for a little while. Lily was quiet, processing. Then, is this because of what Grandpa did? Because he was a hero? Yeah, it is. And if you don't do this, those bad people will keep hurting kids. Marcus nodded. Lily took a shaky breath. Then you have to do it. even though it's scary, because that's what heroes do. The simplicity of her moral clarity broke something open in Marcus's chest. He pulled her close again, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing the weight of her in his arms. You're the bravest person I know, Lily Cole. Braver than me, braver than Grandpa. No, I'm not. I'm scared all the time. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. Marcus pulled back to look at her. I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you do that for me? She nodded, tears still wet on her cheeks. Cross your heart. Cross my heart, hope to fly, stick a needle in my eye. He drew the X over his chest. I will come back to you, I promise. Mrs. Patterson took Lily to the FBI safe house 30 minutes later. The old woman's face was etched with worry, but her voice was steady as she promised Marcus she'd guard his daughter with her life. Marcus stood at the window and watched the armored SUV pull away, carrying the only thing in the world that truly mattered to him. Cross appeared at his shoulder. We need to go. Helicopter to New York. You'll have an hour to review your statement before the press conference. What about after? What happens to Lily after I do this? Witness protection if necessary. New identities, relocation. We'll keep her safe, Marcus. That's a promise. Your promises haven't meant much so far. The words came out harder than Marcus intended. Cross absorbed them. You're right. We've failed at almost every level. Failed your father, failed the victims, failed to root out the corruption in our own ranks. But I'm trying to change that. This press conference, it's not just about your father's evidence. It's about forcing the system to act when it's been publicly exposed, making it too costly to ignore. Marcus turned from the window. Volkov said, even if I go public, nothing will change. Diplomats will invoke immunity. Cases will get dismissed. The operation continues. He's probably right about the short term. Cross pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a series of email confirmations. But we've coordinated with 12 countries who are ready to revoke diplomatic credentials the moment we present evidence. We have prosecutors in 6 nations filing charges simultaneously. We have Interpol issuing red notices. And we have you, a civilian victim whose father was murdered, for trying to expose them. That's a narrative they can't control. A narrative, is that all I am? Good optics for your case. Cross pocketed his phone. You're a man who has the power to speak for people who can't speak for themselves. That's not optics. That's justice. Maybe the first real justice in this whole goddamn mess. The helicopter took them to New York in under an hour. They landed at a secure facility in Queens, drove in an unmarked convoy to Manhattan. UN Plaza was already swarming with press. Satellite trucks, cameras on tripods, reporters checking microphones and doing hair and makeup for their live shots. Inside, Cross led Marcus to a private room where 3 other people waited. A woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes introduced herself as Catherine Reynolds, Deputy Director of the FBI. A younger man, maybe 30, was Thomas Park from the State Department's Office of Human Trafficking. And a woman Marcus's age with dark circles under her eyes and a prosecutor's intensity, Amanda Shaw, Department of Justice. Reynolds spoke first. Mr. Cole, I want to be clear about what you're walking into. This press conference will make you a household name. It will also make you a target for the rest of your life. People you've never met will want you dead. Others will claim you're lying, making things up for attention. Are you prepared for that? Marcus thought about his father dying in a Bulgarian cell, about Elena Martinez murdered on a DC street corner, about Maria, the 14-year-old who'd thanked a nameless janitor for saving her life. I'm prepared. Shaw leaned forward. We'll be filing charges within the hour of your statement. 93 counts across 40 individuals in 12 countries. But Mr. Cole, you need to understand many of these cases will fail. Diplomatic immunity will protect some. Others will flee to countries without extradition treaties. A few might actually face trial, but convictions are far from guaranteed. So why do this at all? Because exposure changes the equation. These networks thrive in darkness. Once they're in the spotlight, they lose their most valuable asset, invisibility. Recruitment becomes harder. Victims are more likely to report. Cooperating witnesses are more willing to come forward. Shaw's expression softened slightly. We might not get everyone, but we'll get some. And for those victims, that's everything. Park cleared his throat. There's one more thing you should know. We've identified the individual your father referred to as the Wolf. His real name is Victor Konstantin. Russian national, naturalized U.S. citizen for 40 years. He's a consultant who works with the State Department on Eastern European diplomatic relations. Marcus felt the ground shift. He works for the government in an advisory capacity. No official position, but he has access to classified information, diplomatic schedules, security protocols. He's been the leak cross mentioned. He's how the network always stayed one step ahead. And you're going to arrest him? Reynolds and Park exchanged glances. Reynolds answered, "We don't have enough evidence yet. Your father's documentation places him at meetings, but we can't prove he knew what those meetings were about. His financial records are clean. His communications are encrypted. Without a cooperating witness willing to testify against him directly, we can't build a case that will hold." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. So the man at the center of all this walks free. For now, but Mr. Cole, you exposing the network puts pressure on Constantine's associates. Someone will flip. Someone always does when they're facing prison time. Reynolds met his eyes. Justice isn't always immediate, but it's persistent. An aide knocked on the door. 5 minutes, everyone. Marcus stood in front of a mirror, straightening his tie borrowed like the suit he wore. He looked different than he had 6 weeks ago. Thinner, older. The exhaustion showed in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Last chance. Walk away now and your daughter lives to adulthood." Marcus stared at the message, memorized the number. Then he powered off the phone and handed it to Cross. "Evidence threatening a federal witness." Cross smiled grimly. "They're getting desperate." Good. The press room was packed beyond capacity. Every major network, international news agencies, independent journalists. The cameras created a wall of glass eyes recording everything. Marcus walked to the podium, the backpack containing his father's life work slung over his shoulder. Flashes popped. Questions were shouted. Reynolds stepped to the microphone first. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Today we're announcing the largest coordinated action against human trafficking in U.S. history. 93 indictments, 40 individuals, 12 countries, over 300 documented victims spanning 25 years. She gestured to Marcus. The evidence was gathered by David Cole, a maintenance worker, who spent a quarter-century listening to conversations in languages most people didn't know he understood. Mr. Cole was murdered in 2022 for his work. Today, his son, Marcus Cole, will present that evidence and speak on behalf of the victims who could not speak for themselves." Reynolds stepped back. Marcus took her place, gripping the podium to keep his hands from shaking. The room went silent. Hundreds of eyes watching, millions more through the cameras. Marcus began in English. "My name is Marcus Cole. My father was a janitor. For 40 years, he cleaned buildings where important people worked. Embassy offices, diplomatic residences, government facilities. And while he cleaned, he listened." He switched to Spanish. "Mi padre escuchaba las conversaciones que otros pensaban que nadie podía entender." Then Mandarin, "Tachilula arshugun the zuishing." Arabic, "Thalathmiya wa sab'a wa ashrun dahiya." Back to English. 327 victims, children, teenagers, young adults, taken from their homes under false promises, trafficked across international borders using diplomatic immunity as a shield. My father documented every case he could verify, every name, every route, every person responsible. Marcus pulled the USB drives from the backpack, held them up. This is his legacy, 25 years of courage, 25 years of listening when others assumed he couldn't understand, 25 years of fighting for people whose society had made invisible. He set the drives on the podium. "My father was murdered for gathering this evidence. A woman named Elena Martinez, who helped him, was murdered in 2015. How many others died or disappeared trying to stop this network, we may never know." His voice grew stronger. "But today, we're saying enough. Today, we're dragging this network into the light. Today, we're telling the 327 victims whose names are in this evidence, you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You matter." Marcus switched to Russian, looking directly into the cameras. "Victor Konstantin, я знаю кто ты, я знаю, что ты сделал." Then French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, speaking to the victims in their own languages, telling them they were seen, heard, believed. When he finished, the silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the questions erupted like a dam breaking. "Mr. Cole, do you fear for your safety? Are you in protective custody? What do you say to critics who claim this is politically motivated? How do you respond to allegations that you're seeking attention after your fraud trial?" Marcus held up a hand. I'll take a few questions. He pointed to a reporter in the front row, a woman from the Washington Post. Mr. Cole, you mentioned your father was murdered. Do you have proof or is this speculation? My father disappeared in 2022. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but no body was ever recovered. I have testimony from individuals who confirm he was held at a private facility in Bulgaria for 11 months before his death. That's not natural causes. That's murder. Another reporter, you speak 11 languages. How is that possible without formal education? Marcus almost smiled, because education happens everywhere, not just in classrooms. My father gave me access to diplomatic families. I learned from their children while he cleaned their homes. Knowledge isn't about credentials. It's about being willing to listen and learn. A journalist from the Times, what do you hope to accomplish with this press conference? Justice for the victims, accountability for the perpetrators, and to prove that power doesn't always win. Sometimes truth is enough. The questions continued for 40 minutes. Marcus answered in multiple languages, switching based on which outlet was asking. CNN got English. Al Jazeera got Arabic. Chinese state media got Mandarin. He made sure every major news market heard directly in their own language what had been done and who was responsible. Finally, Reynolds stepped back to the microphone. Thank you all. Mr. Cole won't be taking additional questions at this time. Copies of the indictments and supporting evidence will be made available through the proper legal channels. This concludes the press conference. Marcus walked off the stage to a new barrage of shouted questions. Cross guided him through a back corridor to a waiting vehicle. They were moving before Marcus's seatbelt clicked. That was, Cross shook his head. I've never seen anything like that. You didn't just present evidence, you made them feel it. Marcus leaned back, suddenly exhausted. What happens now? Now we move you to a secure location. You'll give depositions to prosecutors from 6 countries. There'll be more press, more questions, and in a few hours arrest warrants will start executing. And Lily, already in protective custody, she watched the press conference from the safe house. Mrs. Patterson said she was very proud of you. Marcus closed his eyes. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only bone-deep weariness. His phone, a new one already set up by FBI tech, buzzed. A message from Ben Walsh. You did it. Your father would be proud. Cleveland PD is fielding calls from reporters. Your apartment has 3 news trucks outside. This is real Marcus. You change things. Asterisk. Another from Derek Murphy saw you on TV in the rec room. Every guy in here was cheering. You showed them what real courage looks like. Stay safe, brother. And one from Ray Carter. Magnificent. Simply magnificent. You gave voice to the voiceless. That's the highest calling of language. Well done. Marcus typed responses with numb fingers, then the phone buzzed with a call. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Cole. The voice was cultured, calm, American with the faintest trace of an accent. My name is Victor Constantine. I believe you mentioned me in your press conference. Marcus's hand clenched around the phone. How did you get this number? I have many resources, but that's not why I'm calling. I wanted to congratulate you. That was quite a performance. Very moving. You're a talented speaker. What do you want? To offer you a deal. The evidence you presented today is impressive. It will cause significant disruption to certain operations. However, as I'm sure the FBI has explained, most of the individuals named are protected by diplomatic immunity. They'll be recalled to their home countries. A few low-level facilitators might face charges, but the network itself, it adapts, survives. Constantine paused. Your father believed documentation would destroy us. He was wrong. You believe publicity will. You're also wrong, but I respect your conviction. So here's my offer. Walk away now, do your depositions, testify if asked, but stop digging, stop investigating. Live quietly with your daughter, and I'll ensure that certain elements within our organization leave you alone. And if I refuse, then you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Your daughter grows up in fear, and eventually, maybe in a year, maybe in 10, someone gets through your protection, an accident, an illness, a random act of violence. These things happen, Mr. Cole, especially to people who make powerful enemies. Marcus felt ice in his veins. You're threatening my daughter. I'm stating reality. You've won your moral victory. You've exposed the network. You've given voice to the voiceless. Be satisfied with that. Don't push for more. Or what? You'll kill a 9-year-old girl, make yourself feel powerful by murdering a child. Constantine's voice remained calm. I won't personally do anything, but I can't control everyone in the organization. Some are less refined than I am. Some believe in making examples. I can protect you from those elements if you accept my offer. If you don't, I can't guarantee your safety. Then I guess I'll have to take my chances. Marcus hung up, immediately called Cross on the other phone. Constantine just contacted me, offered me a deal to stop investigating. When I refused, he threatened Lily. Cross swore, we're tracking the call. Keep talking to me while tech triangulates. 3 minutes later, Cross got an answer, burner phone, signal bounced through 6 servers, untraceable. So he walks free, just like you said. For now. Cross's voice was tight with frustration. But Marcus recording that call was smart. We have him on tape threatening a federal witness. That's something. It's not enough. No, but it's a start. The safe house was in rural Pennsylvania, a nondescript farmhouse surrounded by fields. FBI agents in civilian clothes patrolled the perimeter. Inside, Lily and Mrs. Patterson were playing cards at the kitchen table. Lily looked up when Marcus walked in, her face splitting into a huge grin. Daddy, we saw you on TV. You were speaking like a million languages. Marcus scooped her up, a relief flooding through him at the solid reality of her in his arms. Just 11, baby, not quite a million. Mrs. Patterson said you were amazing. She cried a little. The old woman dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. It was very moving, Marcus. Your father would have been so proud. Over the next week, Marcus lived in a strange new reality. Days spent giving depositions to prosecutors, speaking with victim advocates, reviewing evidence with forensic accountants. Nights spent in the safe house playing board games with Lily and trying to pretend this was normal. The news cycle exploded. His face was everywhere. The language man, some outlets called him, the janitor's son who exposed global trafficking ring, was another headline. Think pieces debated whether he was a hero or a publicity seeker. Social media erupted with both support and criticism. 3 days after the press conference, arrests began. Richard Moss was taken into custody at his law office. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was arrested at the hospital. 12 diplomats were recalled to their home countries, their credentials revoked. 2 fled to nations without extradition treaties. But Nikolai Volkov disappeared, vanished completely. His Boston apartment was empty, his bank accounts closed, his vehicles abandoned at long-term parking. It was as if he'd never existed. The FBI put out alerts to every agency, but Volkov had become a ghost. And Victor Constantine continued his consulting work for the State Department, untouched, protected by connections Marcus couldn't see. On the 8th day, Cross brought news. We have a cooperating witness, one of the lower-level facilitators, a man named Thomas Grant. He's terrified, willing to testify against Moss and Mitchell, and he claims he can connect Constantine to direct knowledge of trafficking operations. Marcus looked up from the victim testimony he'd been reviewing. Is that enough to charge him? Maybe. If Grant's testimony holds up under cross-examination, if he doesn't recant, if he survives long enough to make it to trial. That's a lot of ifs. It's more than we had yesterday. Cross sat down across from Marcus. I also have news about your daughter. We can't keep her in protective custody indefinitely. She needs to go back to school, to her normal life. We're proposing a compromise. Marcus's stomach tightened. What kind of compromise? Relocate you both. New city, new identities, but relatively normal lives. You'd still be in witness protection, but lower key. Lily could attend regular school, make friends. You'd have security nearby, but not visible. Where? We're thinking Portland, or maybe Denver, somewhere with good schools, low cost of living, easy to blend in. Marcus thought about Cleveland, about the apartment where Lily had lived her whole life, the park where she played, the school where she had friends. Let me talk to her. That night, after Mrs. Patterson had gone to bed in the guest room, Marcus sat with Lily on the porch. The Pennsylvania countryside was dark and quiet, stars visible in a way they never were in the city. Lily, I need to ask you something important. She looked up from the cat's cradle strings she'd been working. Okay. The FBI says we can go back to Cleveland, back to our apartment and your school and everything. But there might be bad people watching, people who want to hurt us because of what I did. Lily's hands stilled, the people Grandpa was fighting. Yeah, or we can move to a new city. Start over somewhere else. New names, new lives. You go to a new school, make new friends. It would be safer, but it would mean leaving everything behind. Would you come with me? Or would you have to stay and fight the bad people? The question cut deep. I'd come with you. Wherever you go, I go. That's not negotiable. Lily thought about this, her face serious in the starlight. If we go back to Cleveland, the bad people might hurt us. They might try. We'd have protection, but there's risk. And if we move, we'd be safe. Safer. Nothing's completely safe. She unwound the string from her fingers. I don't want to leave my friends, but I don't want you to get hurt either. It's not about me, baby. It's about what's best for you. Lily looked at him with eyes older than 9. Daddy, if we run away and hide, doesn't that mean the bad people win? That they get to keep hurting kids because we were too scared to stop them. Marcus felt his heart break and swell simultaneously. You're too young to have to think about things like this. But I do think about them. Ever since Mom died, I think about how fast things can change, how people can be good. Her voice trembled. And I don't want other kids to lose their moms and dads because we were too scared to be brave. Lily, Mom used to say that doing the right thing is hard. That's why it's called the right thing instead of the easy thing. Tears started down Lily's cheeks. I'm scared, Daddy. I'm really, really scared. But I think we should stay. I think we should keep fighting. Marcus pulled her close. When did you get so wise? I learned from you, and from Grandpa, and from Mom. She hugged him tight. We're a family of fighters, right? Yeah, baby, we are. 2 weeks later, Marcus and Lily returned to Cleveland under heavy security. Their apartment had been cleaned, debugged, fitted with new locks and a security system. Undercover agents took positions in the building and on the street. Life resumed a careful approximation of normal. Lily went back to school. Her classmates asked questions about her famous father. Some parents pulled their kids away nervous about the danger. Others rallied around organizing meal trains and playdates, showing solidarity in small ways. Marcus started a foundation, the David Cole Center for Linguistic Justice. Its mission to identify and train people with language abilities, but no formal credentials, to give voice to those who'd been overlooked by the system. The first class had 20 students, working-class immigrants, refugees, first-generation Americans, people who spoke multiple languages fluently but had never been given opportunities because they lacked the right pieces of paper. Isabella Morgan was among them. 23 white, the daughter of a housekeeper who'd worked for diplomatic families in D.C. She spoke 5 languages and had been rejected by every translation agency she'd applied to. You gave me hope, Mr. Cole. Made me think maybe I could do this too. Marcus looked at her, saw himself reflected back. You can. You already do. Now we're just making it official. The trial of Richard Moss began in March. Marcus testified for 4 days, walking in the jury through the fraud charges, explaining how Moss had been paid to file false complaints. The defense attacked his credibility, his lack of credentials, his sudden fame. But the evidence held. Emails proving Moss had been paid $50,000 by a shell corporation. Phone records showing contact with known associates of the trafficking network. And most damning, Thomas Grant's testimony, placing Moss at meetings where trafficking operations were discussed in detail. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. 28 years in federal prison. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's trial followed in April. She took a plea deal, 15 years, lost her medical license, agreed to testify against others in the network. 43 arrests total, 31 convictions or plea deals, 12 still pending trial or fighting extradition. But Victor Constantine remained free, untouched, still consulting for the State Department, still attending diplomatic functions, still moving in circles of power. Marcus thought about him often, wondered when the next threat would come, when Constantine would decide Marcus had pushed too far and needed to be eliminated. The call came in June. Marcus was at the Foundation office reviewing applications for the fall class when his personal phone rang, the number that only family and close friends had. Unknown caller. He answered cautiously, hello. Mr. Cole, it's Victor Constantine. I thought you'd like to know. Thomas Grant won't be testifying against me. He withdrew his statement this morning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What did you do to him? Nothing. I simply reminded him that witness protection doesn't extend to his elderly mother in her nursing home. That accidents happen to vulnerable people. He made the smart choice. You're a coward, threatening old women and children. I'm a realist. Power protects power, Mr. Cole. You've had your moment. You've won some battles, but the war that was never in doubt. Constantine's voice remained infuriatingly calm. I'm calling as a courtesy to let you know that I'm satisfied with the damage you've done. Several operations have been disrupted. A number of low-level facilitators have been removed from the board. The network has been forced to adapt, which makes us stronger. Is there a point to this? The point is, we're even. You got your justice. I got my reorganization. If you stop now, I'll ensure you and your daughter live long, peaceful lives. Keep pushing, and I can't make that guarantee. Marcus looked out the window. Lily was due home from school in an hour. Would walk 3 blocks from the bus stop with her FBI shadow trailing unseen. Normal life, except it wasn't. Would never be again. I'm going to keep pushing, and eventually you'll make a mistake. Everyone does. Perhaps, but I've been doing this for 40 years without making mistakes. How long do you think you can last? The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence, staring at the phone. Then he called Cross. Constantine contacted me again, said Grant withdrew his testimony. I know. Grant's lawyer filed the motion this morning. We're trying to convince him to reconsider, but Cross sighed. He's terrified. Can't say I blame him. So Constantine walks. For now, but Marcus, we're not done. We have other witnesses, other leads. This isn't over. It felt over. Felt like Volkov had been right in that warehouse. Power beats knowledge. Connections beat truth. That night, Marcus sat with Lily at dinner. She chattered about her day, about the science project she was working on, about her friend Emma's birthday party next weekend. Normal? Safe? Ordinary. And Marcus realized something. Constantine was wrong. This wasn't about winning or losing some abstract war. It wasn't about defeating evil once and for all. It was about the 327 victims whose names were now public, whose cases were being investigated, whose families finally had answers. It was about Isabella Morgan and the 19 other students in the Foundation's first class learning that their abilities mattered regardless of their credentials. It was about Lily growing up knowing her grandfather had been a hero, that her father had honored his legacy, that standing up for what's right was worth the cost even when the cost was high. Justice wasn't a destination, it was a process. Slow, frustrating, imperfect, but persistent. The Foundation grew. By the end of the year, they had 47 students. Marcus taught them more than language, taught them to see the invisible people, to listen when others ignored, to use their gifts for those who had no voice. And 6 months after Constantine's call, something unexpected happened. Thomas Grant changed his mind, walked into the FBI field office in Chicago, and said he was ready to testify again. His mother had died peacefully of natural causes. He had nothing left to lose. His testimony put Victor Constantine at 12 meetings where trafficking operations were discussed in specific detail. Provided documentation of payments flowing through Constantine's shell companies. Connected him directly to the network. The arrest happened at a diplomatic reception. Victor Constantine handcuffed in front of ambassadors and congressmen and the very people he'd cultivated for decades. Marcus watched it on the news, felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 8 months. Cross called an hour later. We got him. He's in custody, no bail. Trial's set for next spring. Will it stick? Grant's testimony is solid. We have corroborating evidence, financial records, communications. It's not a slam dunk, but it's close. Marcus closed his eyes. My father would have wanted to see this. He did see it. Through you finished what he started. After hanging up, Marcus walked to Lily's room. She was asleep, the star nightlight casting soft patterns on the ceiling. He sat on the edge of her bed, watching her breathe. Tomorrow he'd tell her about Constantine's arrest. Tomorrow they'd celebrate this small victory in a long fight. But tonight he just wanted to sit here, to absorb the peace of this moment, to remember that healing wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about learning to carry the weight without being crushed by it. His phone buzzed. A text from the Foundation's newest instructor, Ray Carter, released early for good behavior and hired immediately to teach linguistics methodology. I saw the news. Your father's ghost can rest easier tonight. Well done, Marcus. Well done indeed. Marcus looked at the photo on Lily's nightstand. David Cole young and smiling, holding infant Marcus in his arms. A janitor, a hero, a man who'd believed that knowledge could change the world. He'd been right. Language was power. They couldn't take from you what you knew. And what Marcus knew, what his father had taught him, was that every person mattered. Every voice deserved to be heard. Every invisible soul was worth fighting for. The next morning, Marcus made pancakes with Lily. They ate together at the kitchen table, and when she asked about the news, he told her everything. About Constantine's arrest. About how sometimes justice took time, but it came. Does this mean we won, Daddy? Marcus thought about the question. About the victims still waiting for trials. About Volkov still missing. About the work that remained. We won a battle, baby. The war continues, but that's okay because now we know we can win. Lily smiled and reached for his hand across the table. Outside, Cleveland woke up to another ordinary day. People went to work. Kids went to school. Life continued in its mundane rhythms. But in a small apartment on Mayfield Road, a father and daughter sat together holding hands, carrying forward a legacy that had started with a janitor who listened when no one thought he could understand. And in that moment, that was enough. 3 years passed. The David Cole Foundation had trained 247 people, helped document 863 trafficking cases, provided translation services for victims in 43 countries. Victor Constantine was serving life without parole. Richard Moss had died in prison. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was teaching medical ethics to inmates trying to atone. Nikolai Volkov had never been found. The FBI kept his file open alerts active in every database. Sometimes Marcus wondered if he was dead. Sometimes he thought Volkov was out there watching. Either way, the network Volkov had helped build was shattered. Marcus stood in the Foundation's new building, a converted warehouse in downtown Cleveland. Lily, now 12, was helping teach a beginner's Spanish class to younger students. She'd picked up her 7th language last month. Isabella Morgan ran the D.C. branch. Ray Carter oversaw curriculum development. Derek Murphy, released 2 years ago, managed outreach to prisons, finding the next generation of students who'd been overlooked by the system. Marcus's phone rang. Cross. Marcus, you sitting down? Should I be? We found Volkov, or rather Interpol did, Moscow. He'd been living under an assumed name, but facial recognition caught him at a restaurant. Russian authorities are holding him for extradition. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. Will they actually send him back? Diplomatic negotiations are ongoing, but there's pressure, international pressure, because of what you did 3 years ago. Cross paused. Your press conference changed things, Marcus. Made it too expensive for countries to shelter these people. Russia wants to improve its image. Handing over Volkov helps. Keep me posted. Marcus hung up and looked around the Foundation. Students from a dozen countries speaking 24 languages, learning that their gifts mattered. That credentials were just paper. That knowledge was power no piece of paper could grant or take away. Lily finished her class and ran over. That was Cross. What did he want? Marcus pulled her close. Just updating me on the case. We're still winning, right? Yeah, baby, we're still winning. That night, Marcus sat at his desk reviewing applications for the next semester. A 17-year-old from Somalia who spoke 6 languages. A grandmother from Vietnam who'd been translating for her community for 40 years. A former janitor from Philadelphia who'd learned Polish, Ukrainian, and Russian from the families he'd cleaned for. The cycle continued, one voice leading to another, the invisible becoming visible. His father's letter sat framed on the wall. Language is the key they cannot take. Beside it, a photo from the UN press conference. Marcus at the podium speaking truth to power. And next to that, the most recent addition, a letter from Maria, the girl his father had saved. She was 20 now, studying social work, volunteering at shelters. She'd found Marcus through the Foundation and written, "Your father saved my life when I was 12. I never learned his name until I saw you on TV. Thank you for finishing what he started. Thank you for making sure the invisible are seen. I'm going to spend my life doing the same." Asterisk. Marcus read it again as he did every night before bed. Then he turned off the desk lamp and went to check on Lily. She was already asleep, star nightlight glowing softly. On her desk, homework for her advanced Mandarin class. On her bookshelf, dictionaries in 8 languages. David Cole's legacy carried forward through his son, now being passed to his granddaughter. The chain unbroken. Marcus kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, "Cross my heart, baby. We're going to be okay." And for the first time in 3 years, he truly believed it.